Perinatal podcast. I'm your host, Meg Duke, and today we're doing one of our mini episodes. You all are amazing. You just keep sending me stories, and I continue to be grateful for them. I love when I get DMs and comments and all of that from the main episodes, and I love when people say, "Oh, you need to have this person on and that person on and on and on." But there's something really special as well about this, where you all are telling me your stories. So let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, so let's see. We were on a time out for myself. I used to think that time out was just for kids, something I'd used to help something I'd used to help calm them down when they were overwhelmed or acting out. But one afternoon, I realized I was the one who needed a timeout. It had been a long day, and by the time I got home, I felt completely drained. The kids were fighting over toys, dinner wasn't ready, and I felt my patience slipping away. Normally, I'd push through it, try to power through with the evening routine, but that day I decided to do something different. I told my kids, Mama needs a timeout. They stared at me, confused at first, but I explained that just like them, sometimes grown-ups need a few minutes to cool down and reset. I went into my bedroom, closed the door, and gave myself 5 minutes of quiet. I didn't even check my phone or make a to-do list. I just sat there, breathed deeply, and let myself be still. Those 5 minutes made all the difference. When I came out of my timeout, I felt calmer, more patient, and ready to handle the rest of the evening. It reminded me that taking a break isn't a sign of weakness, it's an act of self-care. And now, every once in a while, I call a timeout for myself when I need it, knowing it's the best way to recharge and be fully present for my family. I mean, you said it all. What do I even need to say? I feel that so deeply. I feel also like I reference Bluey at least once or twice a month in a therapy session. And this makes me think there's an episode where, if you haven't seen Bluey, I encourage you to if you're listening to this podcast. Chili, the mom, says that she needs 20 minutes where nobody talks to her. And uh, Bandit's like, on it, boss. And the girls, of course, are like, what? Mama doesn't want to be around us. She doesn't like us. What do you mean? Da, da, da. And it's no, I think it's a great thing, not only for ourselves to remind ourselves that we don't have to be perfect. I love this. Where was it? It was um, normally having to push through, right? Like that's what we feel like we have to do. We just have to keep going, and we have to stay regulated so they can be dysregulated, but that's so hard to do because you're human. And so taking a break isn't a sign of weakness, it's an act of self-care. I really love that piece of it as well. So not only obviously for yourself, but also too, then you're modeling that. If your children decide they want to grow up and have kids, they will have had a parent or parents who say, I need to take some time for me. I need to chill for a moment. I need some alone time. And that's a good thing, and that's okay. And they won't feel like they have to be super mom, super dad, super parent, whatever they go by in the future. I love that. All right, next one. The focus walk. I've always had trouble sitting still. Hi. I've always had trouble sitting still. Whether it's at work or at home, I find that I get restless and my mind wanders when I try to focus on one thing for too long. One day, when I was feeling particularly stuck while working on a project, I remembered hearing someone say that movement could help with focus. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna interrupt. I'm not gonna interrupt. So I decided to take a break and go for a quick walk. It wasn't a long walk, just around the block. But as I walked, I noticed how much clearer my mind felt. I wasn't sitting there staring at a screen, trying to force myself to concentrate. Instead, I was allowing myself a moment to breathe, to notice the world around me, and to just move. By the time I got back, I felt recharged and ready to focus again. Since then, I've made walks a part of my focus routine. When I'm feeling stuck or distracted, instead of forcing myself to sit and focus harder, I get up and move. It's amazing how a few minutes of fresh air and movement can reset my brain and help me come back with a new perspective. The focus walk has become my secret weapon for staying on track. Oh my gosh, you all. Like there are studies that show how movement impacts things that impact other things that impact other things, and the things that are released and all of that. I mean, your prefrontal cortex, all of that, everything there that's being impacted by that. I was in a training once and they were talking about a girl who was, I think, in junior high, it might have been early high school, and she was having trouble focusing. And so the doctor had suggested trying to jump rope for 5 minutes before she sat down to do her homework, and the difference that it made and how wonderful it was. And obviously, it's not like you go from, a 0 to a 10 or perfect always focused and all of that. But hey, again, the same as with, I'm always a workout away from a better mood. I'll take a 4 and a 5 over a 3 any day. But it was really great because this really helped this girl get into this habit and this pattern and feeling some accomplishment and having gotten that done and also her work done. And then being in the space where I got distracted. Oh my gosh, is that not funny? I just got distracted. Being in a space where she was able to start doing this jump roping. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I'm gonna leave that in. Ah, don't edit that out. Where she got in a space where she actually ended up being on some like national jump roping team or something because she was so good at it. Now that obviously may not be your thing. Maybe this person who sent this in is not trying to be on the Olympic walking team. But again, and they said it's not even a long walk. It's just the fact that they do it and they take the time for themselves. Again, going back to that piece, taking time for yourself and how wonderful that is. So I love, 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 love that. Everyone think about like jumping jacks or jump rope or hanging from a door frame or walks or whatever. That might be something that can do. It really does help with focus. And that is scientifically studied. And also our listener here has told us that as well. All right, last one. The magic of one task. I used to pride myself on being a multitasker, juggling work emails, making dinner, and helping the kids with homework all at the same time. But one evening, after burning dinner and missing an important email, I realized multitasking was actually stressing me out more than it was helping. So I decided to experiment with something new, focusing on just one task at a time. The next day, I committed to the one task rule. When I was helping my kids with their homework, I didn't check my phone. When I was making dinner, I didn't respond to emails. And when I was working, I gave my full attention to one project at a time. It wasn't easy at first. I kept feeling the urge to do more. But after a few days, I noticed something interesting. I felt calmer and more accomplished. By focusing on one task, I was actually getting more done and doing it better. Plus, I was more present for my kids, my work, and even for myself. It's not always perfect, but when I start to feel overwhelmed, I remind myself to slow down and tackle just one thing at a time. It turns out multitasking isn't the magic trick I thought it was. There's real magic in focusing on one thing and doing it well. Oh my gosh, it's so, so, so true. It's so true. Now, I do want to hold space. I had this whole conversation about multitasking with my accountability group, and they were like, well, what about this? And what about that? And it's like mindful multitasking is definitely a thing. Like if you want to listen to a podcast while you're folding laundry or you're cooking dinner and listening to a book on tape, or there are certainly some things, but what this person is describing is so apt. This is it. Like if you're trying to help your kid with homework and you're also on your phone scrolling an email from work, like you're not paying attention to either. And therefore, you're probably not doing your best work on either one. Again, perfection's not real, progress is. And I also really want to hold space for I felt kept feeling tugged like I could do better. Like, oh my gosh, that is such a real thing. I mean, last night we were watching a football game and I was working on something for the PTA, mindful multitasking, right? Watching the Cowboys lose again, stacking these forms for the PTA. Like that is something that I was doing and I was paying attention to that. And the game was secondary because I needed to make sure I counted these things correctly. But also both of those things were happening at the same time, right? Fine. But my spouse was just like on scrolling on Instagram and stuff. And I said, I said at the end, I was like, do what you want. You do you, boo. It's like, but you were doing nothing for your ADHD during that game. He's like, I know, I know. I'm like, hey, I mean, it's like an addiction. Like we're just like so into it. We like need to know what's going on our phone. We need to do this and we need to do that. Now, if you forgot to do Wordle and it's towards the end of Sunday Night Football and you're about to go to bed and the game is on, like, yeah, okay, fine. If that's something that you can do, then fine, go and do Wordle. But like, again, it all needs to be the thing that makes you feel the most comfortable and confident. Every person is different, but it's just being mindful and intentional about what you're doing. So I love that. I love all of my stories from today. You all are the absolute best. I'm going to keep doing 3. This is our 3rd one of these, and I feel like 3 is going well. So I am going to keep with 3. And yeah, please, please, please send me an email, meg@megdukelcsw.com with your story. Send me a DM, send me a voice note, which I would love. I haven't had one of those yet, but I'm really hoping to have one of those soon. I do appreciate maybe you don't want your voice on the show, but I'd love to hear it. So, yeah. And then for those of you also, if you're here, I would love, love, love. Could you just go and give us a little 5-star check real quick on whatever app you're listening to? Please like, please subscribe. If you have a second to write a couple of quick notes in a review, that would be so great. I hate to beg, but it really is what keeps us going. What keeps pushing us in the algorithm. The more fresh results that we get, reviews and everything, the more we get pushed up. Even like the fancy stuff, even like Ted Danson's podcast, they say this stuff at the end. Like it's a dog eat dog. I shouldn't say that anymore. It's a rough podcaster eat podcast eat podcast world out there. So if you guys could take just a second to go and do that for me, I would be so, so, so greatly appreciative. It doesn't have to be the Great American Novel, but I would just love to have you put that out there. Yeah, so thank you so much. Be sure to go watch the last episode that we had right before this was me speaking at the Purdue Women's Conference, talking about balancing career and mental wellness. I would love for you to go listen to that one. I'm very proud of it. And be sure to, again, subscribe so you find out what the next one is. Be curious, not judgmental, and I'll see you back on the Perinatal Podcast.